name's Thane Garvey. I'm a Wurundjeri man. I come from out at Hillsville, and I guess my background's really in a few different areas. I started off in archaeology. I spent a lot of my time there because my dad was the first cultural heritage officer for Victoria. I then moved on to do. I was a NARAP ranger for about 3.5 years, which is really based around land management, conservation, and caring for country. And now I work in education and the arts as much as I possibly can. I would just like to start off by acknowledging my ancestors and my elders, past and present. I also want to take the time to acknowledge all tribes that make up Kulin. Down here, we have Wathaurong to the west. We have Jar Jarrung to the northwest. We have Nurai Ilum directly north, Tanarong to the northeast, and Bunwadang that wrap around all the way down to the south. For us, we're pretty lucky. And I guess the reason I say we're lucky is because we got to be pretty much in the centre of these 5 amazing tribes, and our boundaries stretch from the Werribee River up to Mount Borbor, across the Great Dividing Ranges, and all the way back down to Mordialloc Creek on the other side. Our almighty creator and totem is Bunjil, the wedge-tailed eagle. Bunjil is the creator spirit of Kulin, and one day I'd personally love to watch over my people with Bunjil and my ancestors when our spirits cross over from one life form to another. I say this quite often, whether it be in my classrooms, the tours that I'm taking, or the seminars that I'm running, that it's always so important to make sure that we are maintaining not just a sustainable connection to country, but a meaningful one. Indigenous people all over this continent have been able to do this for thousands of generations because of the way that we've cared for country, the relationship that we've had with country. We've been able to have a life that, I guess, promoted a moral belief that, nothing should be exploited and everything should be treated fairly. We like to call this a life of the dream time because it offered that for our people. There's no limit to how far reconciliation can go as long as it's done the right way. There's no limit to the love or the kindness that we can show other people. For us, we've always maintained integrity based around our culture because our culture is based around caring for others, caring for country. And I think that's something that you can easily do as long as your heart's in the right place. We will continue to carry these morals and these beliefs and the way that our communities are structured in just that way, very close to our hearts. We'll carry that close to our hearts because I think that's something that is symbolic to our identity. We need to make sure that, as we move forward, that Indigenous people have a platform to voice what it is that we need to voice. And that's normally our perspectives around caring for the lands that we've already cared for thousands of generations. We really want everyone else to be able to come along on this journey with us and make sure that country's cared for, and then hopefully in the future we can offer thousands of more generations the same lifestyle that we've always had here. We embrace the multicultural society that we have here on these lands. We will continue to embrace that. I think as we start to learn from each other and embrace our different perspectives, knowledges, then that just offers that space for learning. And again, knowledge sharing is something that we have been extremely committed to for thousands of generations. It's pretty much what our word Naji was for. Naji means ceremony in Woiwurrung. And for us to come together for ceremony, one of the biggest aspects of that was sharing knowledge, trading tools, sharing dance, songs. And I think that's something that we will always promote to do from other cultures that are all over this planet and all the different people from different backgrounds that we have living on these lands now. With that being said, I just want to say a few words in my Woiwurrung language, my mother tongue. Say Wurundjeri, Womanjika, Baluk, Yamin, Kundibik, Womanjika Baluk, Womanjika Kerps, Naranik, Thane, Nungojun, which means you are most welcome to the land of Wurundjeri people today. Welcome people, welcome friends. Again, my name is Thane, and I just want to say thank you again for listening. And I actually have to get out to Sunbury now because I'm running a guided tour up there lunchtime, so I've got to start to make my way up north. But I just wanted to say again, thank you for having me, and I hope you'll have a wonderful, wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thane, for welcoming us to Wurundjeri Woiwurrung country today. I want to acknowledge that we're mostly all guests on this land, and I want to pay respects to elders past and present, and to all First Nations people here today. Thank you very much, Thane. My name is Gerkama Jaralu, and I have been working on the Fair Play program almost since its inception. I work with Diversity Arts Australia as a training consultant and a mentor and a producer, and I'm very pleased to be here today to be the MC for the Fair Play Reflections Report launch. I'd like to first of all begin by thanking a few people that are here today, people who have come from the Diversity Arts Australia board. So great to have you here. I'd like to welcome and thank people from Creative Victoria and Creative Australia that are here today. And especially I'd like to thank the Wheeler Centre for hosting us. I'd like to thank Simon Cotter, Joe Toohey, and Rick Maxwell Douglas. Thank you so much. And David Riding, if you're here as well, thank you so much for having us here today. And finally, I'd like to thank our Auslan interpreters, Brooke Tapia and Lee Papworth, our caterer and photographer, Marla Karamian, and our videographer, Zoe Scoglio. And thank you to all our speakers and to all of you for being here today. It's wonderful to see you all. We're going to begin by hearing from Diversity Arts Australia board member Adi Jayamaharja. Adi's career began at ABC TV, aged 19, working on many iconic Australian TV shows, including Countdown Revolution and The Big Gig. Other highlights include being CEO of 10 on 10 Pictures and Infinity Productions in Malaysia, where he was a co-producer for what was then the biggest historical epic film in Malaysia's history, with a producer, and he was also the producer of Salam Cafe, the first ever Muslim entertainment program screened in prime time in the Western world. And he also co-produced Kambing Jantan, The Male Goat, which reached #1 at the Indonesian box office in 2011. Adi joined the not-for-profit board of Disability Media Australia 3 years prior to a massive stroke. After this forced 6-year hiatus, in 2017, he completed and graduated in the Masters of Screen Arts and Business at AFTRS. He is also a best-selling author. He's an Indonesian-born Australian from a Muslim family, and as a stroke survivor living with a disability, Adi contributes a rich and unique perspective on inclusive storytelling. Please welcome Adi as we bring him onto the stage. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone.
Are you good with this microphone? If I put a microphone just here?
We'll see it out.
Yep.
I'll do my best. I'll try to do my best not to burst into song, okay?
Should we turn him slightly more to the front? Or, and then we can move this. Perfect.
The only other real point of pride I wanted to share, add to what my introduction, was that the film I co-produced, Coming Down, was actually the first ever film from Malaysia to be shortlisted in consideration for Oscar nomination. So that's a really great point of pride.
Generous introduction.
And a very generous introduction. But it's good now, okay? All right. Yes. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. On behalf of the Board of Diversity Arts Australia, I am very proud to help launch Fair Play, Learning and Practice for Equity in Australia's Creative Industries. I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of land on which we meet today, the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people of the Kulin Nation, and I would also like to pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and Aboriginal elders of other communities who may be here today. I would also like to thank Gary for welcoming us today. On behalf of Diversity Arts Australia, I am very proud to help launch Fair Play, Learning and Practice for Equity in Australia's Creative Industries. When Fair Play began in 2019, Diversity Arts saw a gap that wasn't being addressed. Many creative organisations wanted to do better on equity and inclusion, but lacked the frameworks, confidence, or support to embed change into everyday practice. Fair Play has been delivered to over 75 organisations over the country, covering multiple platforms and organisational contexts. The program was developed during some of the most challenging years our sector has faced, from the COVID-19 pandemic to Black Lives Matter movements. Fair Play gave organisations tools to respond to these realities with care, rigour and accountability. We now have a highly robust program that has proven to be successful in its ability to shift arts, screen and cultural institutions with both their internal workings, whether that be employment, leadership, policy development, and in their public facing in community, engagement, programming and marketing. In our board, we are proud of how Fair Play reflects diversity, arts values, leadership by people with lived experience and partnerships built on trust. CEO Lena Nalus and the entire Diversity Arts team worked tirelessly to develop Fair Play, fine-tune it and extend its reach. We also acknowledge the funding, training and delivery partners who believe this work and sustain their commitment over time. This report documents the incredible work achieved over 7 years and the wonderful educators, trainers and mentors that worked on the program with lived experience from the Fair Play focus communities, First Nations, deaf, disabled and culturally and linguistically diverse. In all its iterations, Fair Play has been tailor-made to suit the needs of each organisation involved in the program and constantly improved the feedback from participants. With feedback from participants. The Diversity Arts Board are honoured to have been able to guide this process and thank everyone who has been involved to make it such a success and who will carry this forward, this work forward. Thank you. How's that? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Adi. Unfortunately, Lena Nalus, CEO and Executive Producer of Diversity Arts Australia, who has been overseeing the Fair Play program and report, was unable to join us today. But representing Lena, we have Carolina Triana Cuellar, Research and Policy Associate, who will deliver her remarks, Lena's remarks, and introduce the Fair Play Report Reflections, Learning and Practice for Equity in Australia's Creative Industries. Thank you, Carolina.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Adi, for your kind words. And thank you, Thane, if you haven't left, for your generous welcome to country. I also would like to acknowledge the First Peoples of these unceded lands, the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung peoples of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to elders past and present. I extend that respects to First Nations peoples who are here with us today. I am delivering this on behalf of Diversity Arts Australia and our CEO, Lena Nalus, who is deeply disappointed that she cannot attend today, but remains profoundly committed to this work and to this project. At Diversity Australia, we recognize that conversations about racial and cultural equity must begin with acknowledging ancient sovereignty and the long histories of First Peoples creatives practice in this country. Before I continue, I want to acknowledge the many global genocides and humanitarian crises impacting the communities that we work alongside, including in Palestine, Congo, Sudan, Iran, Haiti, Venezuela, and beyond. These realities make equity work in our sector not optional, but actually urgent. It feels significant to be back in this room. It has been 7 years since we first launched Fair Play here at the Wheeling Centre in February 2019. Over those years, the Wheeling Centre has been an incredible partner, not only hosting events like this one, but also participating in the program itself and supporting this work with integrity. Thanks to all the wonderful staff at the Wheeling Centre, especially Joe Tui, David Riding, Simon Cotter, and Rick Maxwell-Douglas for your help today as well. I would also like to acknowledge our colleagues from Creative Victoria who are here today, Lainey Kluska, Zach Gilliam, and Michaela Posar, and also colleagues from Creative Australia, from Creative Workplaces, Patrick McCarthy and Roger Sen. And of course, I would like to acknowledge our team back in Western Sydney, Ontario Country, and such as Simone Garkham, who are here with us today. And at our board, thank you, Adi, again, and also thank you, Phoebe and Melina, for joining us this morning. For those new to our work, Diversity Arts Australia is the national voice for ethnocultural and migrant racial equity across the arts, screen, and creative sectors. Our vision is for a creative sector that reflects the true cultural diversity of this country. We focus on creatives from migrant, culturally diverse, and refugee backgrounds, working through research, advocacy, creative programs, events, training, and capacity building initiatives like Fair Play. Partnership has always been central to this work. In particular, we acknowledge our foundational partners who shaped Fair Play from its very early stages, starting with Creative Victoria, who had the vision for this kind of project. Thank you to Quarry, Heritage Trust, Art Access Victoria, Garuba, Shifting Ground, Jambana Institute for Indigenous Education and Research, Regional Arts Victoria, Regional Arts New South Wales, Multicultural Arts Victoria, Footscray Community Arts Centre, ACME, Victorian Association of Performing Arts Centres, and Public Galleries Association of Victoria. First Nation leadership, disability leadership, and regional expertise were embedded in this program from the very beginning. So welcome, and thank you for joining us for the launch of Fair Play's Reflections, Learning and Practice for Equity in Australia's Creative Industries. So Fair Play, as we have said previously, began in 2019 as a 2-year pilot with 20 Victorian organizations. What we saw very quickly was that the need for this work extended far beyond that initial scope. 7 years on, Fair Play has been delivered to 75 creative organizations nationally. Along the way, more than 2,000 people have participated in training, master classes, and symposia. 356 equity training and mentoring sessions have also been delivered. And 52 equity action plans are now guiding organizational change across the sector. Participants also consistently report strong outcomes. 88% say their understanding of equity issues improved, and 86% found the training useful or helpful. These numbers matter because they reflect sustained engagement, not one-off workshops. But the most important impacts are structural. Fair Play creates tangible outcomes in equity and inclusion for 3 of the most marginalized groups in our creative communities: First Nations communities, underrepresented culturally and linguistically diverse communities, and people with disability. Organizations change recruitment practices, they diversify boards and staff, they strengthen cultural safety, they expand how they engage with communities and audiences. Many moved from intention to action, embedding accountability into policies, planning, and reporting frameworks. This work has not always been easy. Some participants found the process confronting, but that discomfort is often a sign of meaningful learning. Structural change requires honesty, reflection, and unlearning entrenched habits. In the report, you will find case studies and participant voices that demonstrate how this change unfolds into practice. The recommendations in this report reflect what 7 years of practice has taught us. The report calls for equity training to be treated as core infrastructure for the creative industries, not as an optional add-on. It emphasizes aligning equity action plans with national cultural policy, property resourcing, lived experience leadership, and investing in monitoring evaluation to measure progress over time. It also recognizes that this work requires sustained funding. We are grateful to Creative Victoria, Creative New South Wales, the Victorian Music Development Office, and the String Rights Cultural Fund for supporting iterations of Fair Plays across its lifespan. Together, the recommendations in this report point toward a sector where equity and inclusion are supported by systems, accountability, and long-term investment, not simple goodwill. So looking ahead, Diversity Arts Australia is preparing for a national expansion of Fair Play through the launch of Creative Equity Training, our new self-paced online program for people working across the arts, screen, and creative industry. And we'll hear about this in a short time. This next stage responds directly to what organizations told us they need: flexible, accessible training that can be embedded into everyday workplace practice. This report is an invitation to continue building a more equitable and accountable creative sector. I hope you find the report insightful and thought-provoking as we continue our work together. Thank you to everyone who contributed their time, expertise, and experiences to the development of the report. On behalf of our CEO, Lina Noglus, I want to thank the many educators, facilitators, mentors, coordinators, and producers who shaped this program. In particular, Dr. Paula Abud, Rob Hyatt, Dr. Margaret Mayhew, Caroline Bowdish, Sonia Mermat, Gorkem Ajar Aliu, who was also the excellent producer of this event and the lead trainer in many of the Fair Play programs. Dr. Ruth de Sousa, Professor Narine Yon, Fotis Kapetopoulos, Dr. Genevieve Greaves, Dr. Lily Brown, alongside many more educators, mentors, and others whose expertise, care, and rigor are reflected in this report. I also like to personally thank and acknowledge Creative Victoria's Amanda Brown, Sue Doyle, and Carrie Subtilis. I also want to thank the organizations that showed up for this program, demonstrating a genuine commitment to equity, anti-racism, accessibility, decolonization, and cultural safety. Many more people are acknowledged within the publication itself. This has always been collective work. Thank you all for being here today and for your continued support. Be sure to grab a copy of the report before you leave, and feel free also to download the digital version using the QR code on the slide. And now hand over to my colleague Simone Amelia Jordan, Special Initiatives Manager at Diversity Arts Australia, who will briefly introduce the creative equity training to all of us today. Thank you very much.
Don't trust me with a clicker because I'll mess that up. Thanks, Carolina. Good morning, everyone. Thank you all so much for being here. I am Simone, and I am a recovering music journalist. They used to exist. There's still a handful around. I currently co-manage several programs with Diversity Arts Australia, including my role as Chief Hype Woman for our brand new creative equity training. I'm also selling merch today because immigrants, we get the job done. We've all got a million roles. And you can come and see me at the back. We're selling books and bags and my memoir as well. So there you go. And I just wanted to make a note that flash photography is being used. Thank you, Carly, for the heads up. Okay. Creative equity training is very exciting. It's a flexible, self-paced, online learning program designed specifically for people working across the arts, screen, and creative industries. Built by Diversity Arts Australia and led by people with lived experience, the training supports organisations to move beyond intention into practice, embedding cultural and racial equity into everyday leadership, programming, and engagement. The program grows directly out of Darts' nationally recognised Fair Play work, primarily here in Victoria, and the Creative Equity Toolkit, which I hope many of you have used, translating years of sector advocacy and delivery into a flexible, structured learning experience. It is designed to complement, not replace, existing DEI frameworks, providing sector-specific tools that translate values into everyday practice. I'm in sales mode already. It's like the training includes 9 modules at the moment, 4 core and 5 specialists, including cultural safety, inclusive programming, and anti-racism in creative workplaces. What? There's racism in creative workplaces? No. It will be available to organisations from next month, and we invite you to contact us to learn more. Please email that email and it will get forwarded to me, and as Chief Hype Woman, I will be in touch. So we're really excited about creative equity training, building on the amazing work that we're celebrating today with the Fair Play launch and our Creative Equity Toolkit. And I will get to the back to my job and hand it over to Gurkham again. So thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Simone. So many people, as you've heard, made the Fair Play program possible. Many of you are here today, which is wonderful to see. We're now going to hear from a few people who were involved in the program. The first person we're going to hear from is on video because unfortunately he's overseas. Well, fortunately for him, unfortunately for us, he's overseas. That's Rob Hyatt from Koori Heritage Trust, who was a key partner in their Fair Play program. Rob is a proud Wotjobaluk Gunai Kurnai man with family ties to the Lake Tears Aboriginal Trust community. He currently is Manager of Cultural Experiences at the Koori Heritage Trust. In this role, he delivers cultural competency and cultural safety training to government, the private sector, community organisations and the general public, as well as providing consultations in regards to Aboriginal program development and reconciliation action plans. So we'll just hear from Rob a few minutes about his experiences of the program as a mentor, as a trainer, and also representing Koori Heritage Trust. Thank you.
How the Koori Heritage Trust was involved in the Fair Play program was initially many years ago, actually, as a partner organisation. And in doing that through then my role and the work that I do, which was actually supporting, workshops and teaching and educational workshops, in particular around cultural competency with Aboriginal communities, and then also talking about cultural safety, and in particular cultural safety within organisations, but also had some, really great conversations about cultural safety within galleries and public spaces from that point of view as well, across the arts industry. And within that space as an educator, I also then worked with a number of organisations as a mentor within that space. I think the benefits of participation in the Fair Play Arts program really is probably on two fronts. One is obviously the educational and the learning. And I think from that perspective, just simply being a better organisation within these spaces of cultural safety, of inclusion, of the broader community in many ways, and whether that be Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island people, First Peoples, whether that be multicultural, disability, whatever sector we may be talking about, I think that's really important, of just being educated within those spaces to create safer spaces. The other side to that then, I think, is that through that, the support of developing relationships with broader community groups, with diverse community groups, how you engage, maybe not just in the work, but engage even in exhibitions and galleries and the public spaces that many work in, I think is really important as well. I think the most challenging aspect that I found for participants is really, as much as anything else, the various levels of education, as much as anything. Obviously, my concentration, and as part of the Koori Heritage Trust, is around First Peoples. And, there's some really amazing people in the arts industry that have, great connections and a lot of knowledge. And then there's people that really are, I think, starting out for the first time. And either level is perfectly fine. It's just ensuring that we're always tailoring and engaging for all of those various levels. We come across a lot of people that have had a lot of contact. We come across a lot of people that it's their first time coming in contact with First Nations people. So really ensuring everyone can be on their journey and to understand that it's okay wherever you might be on that journey, I think is one of the hardest parts. It's allowing people, if anything, to get over their initial fears of taking those first steps. I think the most important things that any organisation, that people can do to really ensure the maintenance of the principles within this space is to actually really ensure that they are embedded as a part of the values of your organisation, and they're a part of your own personal values as well. Especially from a First Nations point of view or First Peoples point of view, these things aren't an add-on to what you already do, and they're not new sets of values that get added on. Many of the organisations I worked with through the Fair Play program actually already had some really amazing values that make them who they are. And so to actually ensure that those values are a part of how they work and connect and develop relationships with First Peoples is already there. And just know that you maintain those as part of your values. You don't make them add-ons to what you do. I think it was important for the Koori Heritage Trust to partner early in the Fair Play program, maybe because we are a part of that arts industry ourselves, and a lot of our mandate, I guess, is not just educating people from a First Peoples point of view, which is a lot of the work that I do, but it's also about ensuring that whatever we do within the arts industry is actually supportive of First Peoples artists, performers, whatever else it might be within that arts industry. And so if we can educate the broader industry to then support how they might engage with our artists from our community, then I think it all just works together so well. It actually ensures that what we can leave behind is ways for whoever we participate with to simply be better in the ways that they work with our people. So if we can leave that behind as a legacy for continued work without the Koori Heritage Trust, then I think that's a real key aspect to, you know, what we hope to achieve from that point of view.
Wonderful. And now we're going to have a short panel discussion between myself and two really key people who have been involved in the Fair Play program from the beginning. Margaret Mayhew, who was the original coordinator of the program, if you want to come up to the stage, and Janice Florence, who was a mentor and also a key partner with the organisation Arts Access Victoria. So I might just read your bios as we come up on stage. Is that okay? Yep, excellent. So I'm just going to read, first I'll read Janice Florence's bio. So Janice Florence is the Manager of Training and Consultation at Arts Access Victoria. She has a long-standing record in the arts and in disability advocacy. Her team is committed to improved access for deaf and disabled audiences, artists and arts workers in the arts and in cultural life in Victoria. Arts Access Victoria is the peak disability arts organisation in Victoria, providing a range of programs to support deaf and disabled artists and dedicated to challenging attitudes in the arts industry. Hi Janice, how are you going? Dramatic entrance, yeah. Always. How's that? Is that should I push it in a bit more, do you reckon? Or how's that? Do you want to move
Yeah,
over?
that's fine.
That's good?
I don't
Yep.
know, really.
All right, excellent.
Thanks.
Cool. Whoop. Wobbling, yep. And just to finish up, outside of Janice's AAV work, for the past 27 years, Janice has been the Artistic Director of Weave Movement Theatre, a respected disability physical theatre company. Margaret Mayhew is based on Gadigal lands and working as the Disability Programs Manager at Creative Australia. While living on Wurundjeri country, they worked with Diversity Arts Australia from 2019 to 2023 to develop and coordinate the Fair Play, Equity and Inclusion program in the creative industries. And from 2022 to 2025, worked with Janice Florence at Arts Access Victoria in disability advocacy and training. Prior to working in advocacy, Margaret taught and researched in cultural studies and art history, gender, sexuality and diversity studies, public policy and design. Margaret has lived with chronic pain for most of their adult life and has close connections with disabled creatives in Melbourne. They are also a visual artist and CCD practitioner with decades of experience working closely in creative collaborations with refugee communities and within queer communities in Sydney and Melbourne.
So long.
Hello. Okay, fantastic. So really, we just wanted to ask a few questions about your experiences of the Fair Play program. But we might start off just by asking Margaret about your involvement in the Fair Play program. Just tell us a little bit more about how you got involved and what did you do?
Yes, okay, thank you so much, Gurkhan. Can people hear me okay? Great, okay. And I'm going to follow the example of RD and read off my phone. My CV demonstrates that I do have ADHD and I do get distracted unless I have things written down. So my involvement in Fair Play began because I was actually recording and writing up some of the experiences and encounters at the first Fair Play Symposium in February 2019. I then started in the role of coordinating the program, and that was working alongside Mala Karamian, who's taking photographs and has supplied catering today, and also Ubitopia, who's a brilliant CCD practitioner and printmaker. Mala is also an amazing photographer and artist. And then I think when we went into the COVID lockdowns, then I was working with Maylee Hunt, who is doing the digital production side of things. So I mention this because my experience of Fair Play and of disabled advocacy has always been as a multiplicity, always working with people, always working alongside. And that was such a strength. And working with incredible academics such as Dr. Görkem Arajurlu, Dr. Paul Rowood, Dr. Noor Shembi, Dr. Jen Greaves, and then also there's less PhDs amongst deaf and disabled advocates because universities are incredibly, not just racist, they're also incredibly ableist, but definitely working alongside Kahava Lilith, Janice Florence, and Jax Brown, who's can't be here today. So we developed this community of practice, and that involved lots and lots and lots of long conversations and reflections, and it was a kind of, I think when I was involved, it was a shaggy dog of a program in a way, and so it was amazing to sort of see how Görkem, you were able to kind of take a lot of that and refine it into something that was informed by that very rough iterative practice into a really solid program. Then I started to work with my mentor and colleague, Janice Florence, but I also, a typical NGO work that was also part-time, so that meant I could have 3 part-time casual gigs at the one time. So I was a mentor for Fair Play Regional in 22-23, and that was incredible. Again, that was a smaller program. I was working closely with Görkem and also Dominic Golding, and that was, again, that community of practice model of reflection, iteration, reflection, refinement. And I also got to mentor my now colleague Patrick McCarthy, who's here today from Creative Workplaces, as part of VAPAC, Victorian Association of Performing Arts Centres. I can't believe I remember that acronym. So I think, during that long program, what I really, really loved being a part of particularly was kind of witnessing, I think specifically for disabled, and I'm not using deaf and disabled because, to be honest, we didn't actually have that much involvement of the deaf and Auslan speaking community. It was primarily disabled community working alongside First Nations and culturally and linguistically marginalised, which is the term I like to use, calm down. But particularly for disabled advocates, often, prior to that, often we've been kind of presented as a sort of an innocent power, and a lived experience speaking as a singularity. And what happened in Fair Play, and I was also so glad to see this work really championed by Janice Florence at Arts Access Victoria, was that we went from being this sorts of, we'll bring out the disabled person to speak out their experience, but actually as experts who would go into these sort of, quite high-level organisations and say, this is what you need to do. I actually know about this, I'm an expert, and I can guide you in your strat planning so it isn't ableist and racist. So that was, and I'm lanyard off today, so I'm being a bit more blunt than I would if I was wearing my Creative Australia lanyard. And actually being as genuine and reflected and empowered advocates is really important. And Janice's approach was absolutely instrumental to this participant-led approach. So Janice, I thought maybe if you can talk more about your involvement.
Yes, well, I think I first met Margaret through the Fair Play project, when in the initial stages when Creative Victoria funded it for Victorian organisations, and she commandeered me into delivering some training and helping with consultation and reviewing plans. I was very impressed by the program because of its depth and breadth and consistency of support and breadth of support that it gave to organisations who were participating. With the consultation practice that we've been developing over years, we do bring in disability advocates who, with various different types of access needs, and who usually experienced advocates in their own community and think broadly about their own communities, to give feedback to government organisations, arts organisations on their disability action plans and on various other types of access that they might want advice on. So they get very direct advice and very always creative and always advice that I learned from myself. And so I was mainly involved in training in that first initial stages of the program.
Thank you. I wanted to ask you both, Margaret, I'll start with you. Why do you think a program like Fair Play is really important for the arts and cultural sector in Australia?
Yeah, and also I just remember, I forgot also to mention and thank Wafam, who was a very key mentor when I was involved in the program. I wrote the name and then forgot to read it out. So I think the strength and significance and importance of Fair Play is that it's intersectional, and I mean genuinely intersectional, not like the licorice all sorts version of intersectional that gets presented in so many smotherhood statements by large organisations. So it was something that was genuinely grounded in what Rob Hyatt said, people with connections to communities, and it was a space where connections to communities and to practice were enhanced. So, it was something that was created and developed by and with First Nations, disabled and culturally diverse advocates, creators, and people in contact. So that sort of, lived experience, and turning that into kind of strategic planning and advice was incredible. And the key thing, and Gurkham, you were really instrumental in this, is kind of emphasising accountability, and emphasising the creation of equity action plans that had to move from what I call smotherhood statements. I don't know if people know the phrase motherhood statements. It's a bit misogynist, don't like it. So I say smotherhood because they're those sorts of bland things. We welcome people from all backgrounds. Designed to smother dissent and the gag reflex that happens when you hear these kinds of things. So, a lot of kind of diversity action plans or, disability action plans were these ghastly beige smotherhood statements. And so the type of planning that was developed through the Fair Play program is something that's accountable, and it emphasises accountability, reflection, awareness. Those audits and the long Excel spreadsheets, which is a bit of my happy place, but no one else's. So to actually kind of genuine actions, but also both a measurable impact and responsiveness to communities, and sort of, checking in that responsive by, actually asking and reflecting and gathering the feedback and the advice that people got.
Thanks, Margaret. Janice, what are your thoughts about the importance of a program like this in arts and culture in Australia?
Yeah, well, I mean, in my job with Arts Access, I deliver a lot of training, and our whole purpose is to consult and train with the arts industry to open it up. There's so much exclusion within the arts industry of deaf and disabled audiences and deaf and disabled artists and arts workers for various reasons. And so I think it's terribly important to open up people's ideas about that, and even to start them thinking sometimes when they haven't thought in that direction. Just a sort of age-old assumption about inability of deaf and disabled people. I think with Fair Play, the consistency of support and length of time that was allowed in developing action plans was really important, and the ongoing support and training that was offered. It was an in-depth process. I really admired the amount of time that people had to devote to their action plans, and the breadth of the action plans that were developed. And as Margaret was saying, the concentration on evaluation, sort of trying to ensure that there actually are outcomes and that people think about and evaluate the outcomes, whether they're working, whether they're not working, whether they need something new, but always reviewing what they're doing in terms of how it's working in the community. So I think these things are vital, and I just find over and over again that organisations lose momentum when they lose a particular staff member who's passionate. They, and they can lose sight of, after one disability action plan, lose sight and enthusiasm. So I think it's ongoing encouragement is really, and training and learning is really necessary.
And funding as well, isn't it? Like,
yes, funding.
Yeah.
Well, as a director of an independent theatre company, I'm constantly thinking, yes, but how are we paying for this? And where does the money come from? So yes, funding is really important, because otherwise arts organisations often think we haven't got the resources, we haven't got the money, we can't pay for this, this is an extra, it's not a priority, and it can be left and neglected without the funding to do it.
And besides funding, what do you think some of the challenges were for participating organisations in the program?
There were many, as some of the Fair Play alumni who are here will know. I think some of the ones I think it's important to bring out. Janice mentioned, the funding issue, and also staff. A lot of people who work in the creative industries are casual or sessional or subcontractors, especially front of house or retail, and so the organisations can't pay them to attend a program like this. So that was a really important for Fair Play. But generally, as a mentor, what I found, some organisations, they might be, say, working like a lot of the smaller regional galleries within local government. So they're accountable to a local council who might not share the values of decolonisation and anti-racism and anti-ableism that a lot of the staff within these smaller organisations did. And then also the boards, we know the question of arts boards. I mean, I think it could be solved by just, can we have less bankers and more deaf and disabled people on boards and more people of colour on boards? But, I don't control the world, which is not a bad thing. Janice mentioned again the funding landscape, the fact that most staff are casual and are precarious, and institutional knowledge is lost. There also was, some organisations, there was pushback and there was complacency, and I think it's an ongoing risk. Some organisations that were doing really well in one area were quite complacent and quite resistant to be challenged. In another area, I think there's still my view on Melbourne, and I think hopefully Melbourne changed a little bit, but certainly the insularity of a lot of organisations. Like I remember speaking to a theatre organisation, I'm like, do you actually go to any productions, like any cultural stuff by people you didn't go to VCA with? And they said, we went to Footscray. And I'm like, that's 3 k's from the city. Like, are you going to Epping? Are you going to Dandenong? Are you going to Sunbury? So, and that was quite new. And I think also the other tension is, say, a lot of things that might look good on practice or be strong in one area don't actually follow through. So, sorry to highlight my kind of colleagues from Fringe. So I think Marlene and Carly are here, but the first year Fringe applied, and Fringe had done groundbreaking work, particularly shout out to Carly who'd initiated and sustained that amazing work in the disability space. Also, Black Fringe, so they're doing amazing stuff in the First Nations space, and they applied, and we're like, oh, you don't need to do that, you're doing really good stuff. Then in 2019 came Geisha Gate, where they'd actually allowed a production by someone from one of those frightening suburbs beginning with B, south of the river on Boon Wurrung, we'll blame the Boon Wurrung land, no, just south of the river, to have a show where she dressed up in yellow face about geishas. So naturally, the culturally diverse community went, oh, what? And I think Mama Alto was instrumental in saying, oh my God, this can't happen. And Fringe sort of said, yeah, okay, we need to learn. And, you know, all credit to them, to Simon and to the other people. They went, we need to do this program to learn how to actually think thoroughly, intersectionally throughout all of our processes. And, you know, I think it was, you know, out of something which is terrifying came something, terrifying and ghastly came something actually really solid.
Thanks, Margaret.
Yeah.
Janice, did you want to add anything about challenges for participating organisations?
I guess, again, thinking about funding, a challenge to organisations is, will we devote time and resources to this? But it was a funded program by Creative Victoria when it first started. And so this gave people, funding can be a barrier, but in that case it gave people funding if they wanted to choose to do the program. They weren't obliged to do the program, so some people chose to and some people chose not to. And sorry, can you just repeat the question again so I make sure I'm...
I think that was a great answer, but
Okay.
it was just about any challenges, but you've both covered lots of challenges, but let's move to the future. So my last question for you both was, looking to the future, what do you think the arts and cultural sector in Australia needs now in terms of justice, equity, diversity and inclusion? Do you want to answer first, Janice?
Well, I'm still thinking about funding, and I think that the organisations that have expertise to support and assist arts organisations and give disability leadership also need to keep being funded because they provide this backup and momentum. They approach organisations or they're requested by organisations, so we need to keep being able to do that in the future. Because I think that things do lose momentum, people leave, things change, and sometimes people are a bit half-hearted in their execution of their wonderful plans. And so those organisations really are vital in making that process continue. And everything in that area needs to be disability-led so that we can continue to work within the sector and bring our insights to the sector. And also funding for the organisations that are receiving consultation or training in order that they can be able to do that with the current sort of financial situation in the arts sector. And requirements for government-funded organisations to have a disability or diversity action plan would also be helpful. And
Absolutely.
the resources to back that up.
Thank you, Janice. Margaret, did you want to add anything?
Yes, so many things. I've got a list. So I think definitely funding, and I think, I just imagine, Janice, if you were just able to do the work and not have to be applying for funding or quitting grants or dealing with that precarity. I think of incredible mentors like Kahava. Imagine if, you know, you had just a secure position to continue doing the incredible work that I've, seen you do when I've worked alongside you. And I think particularly for our constituents, which are deaf and disabled communities, culturally diverse communities, First Nations communities, poverty is a major issue. It's a massive issue. I'll never forget the grants that that IAV will kind of give out. They were kind of they could just give out $5,000 to disabled people, and people were buying things like, a blanket so I'm not freezing, headphones so it's not crackling and tormenting my ears when I'm trying to do this sound work. Really, really basic stuff. The absolutely inadequate resourcing and bureaucracy of the NDIS. I think we're talking about chairs yesterday. That's a really, really big issue. And I think also the siloing. So this is definitely a lanyard off moment. So I'm working in an identified position for Creative Australia under a program that's been funded, Equity, the Arts and Disability Associated Plan. It's still siloed. And beyond the amazing, incredible genuinely intersectional, culturally safe, thank you, Dr. Ruth D'Souza, networks of communities and activists and advocates and culture makers in Victoria. Nationwide, the deaf and disabled communities aren't that intersectional. They are mainly people of a certain colour that is beige on their skin and sometimes hair. And I mean, no shade on beige. Actually, lots of shade on beige. So that intersectionality, and it's been kind of represented as something that's about licorice all sorts in a very tokenistic way. The types, and also I think we need more nuance about the impact of other barriers on gender, on queerness, on indigeneity, and on racialisation, on how disabling barriers are experienced, because they're massive. And I think we just need more support for organisations that are actually doing good work and are connected to and linked to and empower communities, rather than everyone getting to a certain way and then that incredible capacity being lost.
Lots to think about. Thank you so much, both of you, Janice and Margaret. Really appreciate sharing your thoughts today. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Move to my other microphone.
Hello. Yes. Thank you so much, Janice and Margaret. Oh. I'd now like to welcome Dr. Lily Brown to the stage, who was a key trainer in our program. There was many trainers who've worked on the Fair Play program. Many here today, Dr. Ruth D'Souza, of course, and others. And Dr. Lily Brown is going to share some of her experiences of being a trainer in the program. Dr. Lily Brown is an interdisciplinary educator, facilitator, researcher, the CEO of Mugabala Books, and co-founder of the women-led collective Shifting Ground. She holds qualifications including from the University of Cambridge and University of Melbourne, and has worked with organisations and institutions across the not-for-profit, government, corporate, arts and culture and education sectors on the development of practices that seek to rehumanise First Nations people and challenge anti-Indigenous racism. Lily's research and work has consistently centred the importance of valuing First Nations storytelling and the relationship between young people and elders as key to the well-being of our communities. Lily lives in Rubibi, the Yawuru place name for Broome, and belongs to the Gumbangir people of the mid-north coast of New South Wales. Thank you, Lily.
It is actually just such a pleasure to be here in person and to see all of these beautiful faces I've met online over the years in an actual room. So, yeah, I'm feeling very heartful in this moment to be in the physical presence of you all. Ginagain, my language, the language of the Gumbaynggirr people, and Wominjeka in Woiwurrung, the language of this place. Hello. I want to also begin by acknowledging the people of the Kulin Nations, and particularly the Wurundjeri people as the sovereign custodians of Naarm, this place, also known as Melbourne. I pay my deepest respect to elders, past and present. As a mother who has birthed 2 of my babies here, I really do thank the ancestors of this place and the land here. Country that has nourished thousands of generations of people, including each of you, with sustenance and care, but also inspiration, beauty and brilliance. As unproductive debates continue to be fuelled by News Corp media and politicians around the value of welcomes and acknowledgements, I also take heed from the words of Auntie Patsy Cameron, an elder from Lutruwita, Truwerna, or the place many of you would know as Tasmania, in her yarn with Martin Flanagan that was published by Magabala Books earlier last year. Auntie Patsy reminds us that ceremonies that have made visitors feel welcome are not a new thing. She says, the old people always had a way of welcoming neighbours and people to country like a rite of passage to enter certain places and to have safe passage through those places. Because we're welcoming people to country where they belonged and where their stories are. It's an invitation that comes with an obligation to tread lightly on the land, as Thane said. She continues that country is a living, breathing entity that connects us to deep time and the first human sunrise. Through the ceremony, you can feel that. You can know that you are welcomed. You can participate and enter that space or place. As mentioned in my introduction, thank you, Gercom, I'm Dr. Lily Brown. I am a Gumbaynggirr woman. I'm currently based in Rabibi, which is the place name for Broome, on the unceded lands of the Yari and Juukan people. I wear many hats, and in this context, two of those are as the CEO of the First Nations community-controlled publishing house Magabala Books, and my second hat is as co-founder of Shifting Ground alongside my beautiful Jinda, Genevieve Greaves, who's at the back there, who is a Warramai woman. Shifting Ground is a critical collective of First Nations educators, facilitators, research and consultants, and like Gercom said, we really aim to rehumanise First Nations people by building safer organisations and systems, and we're also supported in that work by some unbelievably incredible allies, some of whom are here today. I'm very excited by this opportunity to share some thoughts with you after 7 years of the Fair Play program's existence. Thank you to Diversity Arts team, and particularly to Lena, Sonia and Gercom for the gentle support and guidance I know that you have provided to Fair Play facilitators, mentors and participants since the program's inception in 2019. It's been just an absolute pleasure to work with each of you and to watch the Fair Play program grow and evolve. Evidently, from this wonderful report, which you now all have a copy of, and from these reflections that we're all celebrating today, Fair Play, not only in its depth and scope, but in its process of unfolding, has had a profound impact on the arts and cultural sectors of Victoria, New South Wales and beyond in its national initiatives. I first facilitated a Fair Play session on cultural safety in 2020 during lockdown in the depths of a cold Naarm winter and the COVID pandemic. Daycares were closed to stop viruses from spreading. And for most people, and I'm sure for many of you in the room today, engagement with the outside world occurred from bedrooms or home offices via devices on a Zoom call. I remember that time because of the immense screen fatigue. I remember the way I was always asked by my partner, and I still am, to be honest, to talk more softly on Zoom calls while our baby daughter slept in the adjacent room. I also remember the deep heartache as we mourned the death of George Floyd, but also the many unexplained and unprosecuted deaths, decades on from the Royal Commission into the Aboriginal deaths in custody of our own mob back here on this continent as global Black Lives Matter movement gained momentum. It is within this context that I also recall the Fair Play sessions I had the privilege of presenting. I remember these sessions as glimmers of hope and light in amongst the gloom, because in those Zoom rooms were eager representatives of arts organisations that held the power to shape the cultures and practices of their respective organisations and industries, and more broadly the cultural and creative fabric of our nation. There were CEOs, there were board representatives, and there were also staff from organisations doing the grunt work. As I read the reflections and the feedback that make up the report that you each have a copy of, the profundity of my feelings during these sessions from across 2020 and 2021 are captured in the way that the training and mentorship delivered as a part of the Fair Play program has impacted those who have participated in it. One of the questions posed and answered early on in the report is, why do we need fair play? In response, an important statistic is shared. Despite First Nations people making up 3.8% of the broader population, we make up only 1% of this country's creative professional workforce. This statistic is an indication of structural racism. It is an indication of anti-Indigenous racism. It is a reflection of the way First Nations people are devalued, not only in our sector, but also more broadly. Anti-Indigenous racism plays out first and foremost on the bodies of our children and young people. We see this both in the number of Black kids locked up in the fact that more Aboriginal kids live in care now than under 20th century policies of assimilation that created the stolen generations, and here in Victoria it is worse than anywhere else in the country. In the fact that First Nations children and young people continue to experience an education system that's alienating and not fit for purpose. These kids face barriers to accessing representations in art, music, on TV, and stories that reflect the diversity of their life worlds, because they don't often exist. These kids are the victims of a cumulative absence of Black representation in art and creative production, but also an absence behind the scenes of Black arts workers and executives who scaffold the bringing of these creative representations into being. But anti-Indigenous racism exists not only to negatively impact First Nations people, it also impacts non-Indigenous folk who are often not supported in their workplaces to recognise the brilliance of First Nations creativity, governance and ways of working that are informed by the experience of existing on this continent for more than 60,000 years. What a resource, what a creative potential, what a missed opportunity, what a shame. In all of my work where anti-Indigenous racism festers, so too does alienation. Alienation of Aboriginal people and also the alienation of non-Indigenous folk. Alienation manifests as a lack of care for each other and for country, the untethering of people from one another and from place. This alienation is eroding, it's fatiguing, and at the core of it, it is the same thing that enabled this nation to come into being, based on the fallacy that this continent was a land belonging to no one. I was recently listening to the Palestinian poet and psychologist Devon Attala in conversation with Adrienne Marie Brown, who authored the book Emergent Strategy and hosts a really wonderful podcast called How to Survive the End of the World. Attala said that in this current moment, where access to any and all information and disinformation is accessible at the click of a button, a moment where many young folk live their social lives online and we are collectively witnessing violence being perpetrated against people and the planet on our TV screens, on our computers, on our phones, iPads, and we're feeling helpless and often hopeless in our inability to stop it, we are in crisis. Attala says that we are experiencing a crisis of empathy, a crisis of imagination, and a crisis of connection. As I was listening to Attala and thinking about how I was going to honour Diversity Arts' invitation to speak today, I kept coming back to the role of fair play in supporting participants to connect to one another through the development of shared language and practices, in supporting organisations to embed ways of working that rehumanise First Nations people, people with a disability, LGBTQI+ folk, deaf people, people from a refugee and marginalised migrant backgrounds, that the value of safety and practices that counter racism and exclusion, and supporting organisations to embed this. As I exist in this moment of crisis alongside each of you, I again felt such gratitude to Fair Play for providing spaces and opportunities to connect and to reimagine futures underpinned by better practices within organisations and across our beloved sector. In the face of growing alienation, the success of Fair Play, as evidenced in this report, is both an antidote to this alienation and a reminder of the importance and impact of this work. For me, this report also animates the necessity of Fair Play continuing to do what it does with more organisations and individuals now and into the future. So again, thank you Fair Play and Diversity Arts team in my language, Yara Yarang. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lily, for putting words to, no doubt, what so many of us are feeling. We're now going to hear from two of our mentors that worked on the Fair Play program. Mentoring was a really key part of the Fair Play program. People, experts with lived experience, worked directly with organisations to facilitate the process of developing action plans and the whole Fair Play program. So the first mentor that I'd love to bring up is Dr. Noor Shkembi, OAM. Noor is an award-winning curator, writer and art historian with a research specialisation in Islamic art history, contemporary art and post-colonial theory. Noor has produced and curated over 150 events, exhibitions and community engagement projects. Recent exhibitions include Soul Fury at Bendigo Art Gallery, Destiny Disrupted at Granville Centre Art Gallery and Griffith University Art Museum, and 5 Acts of Love at the Australian Centre for Contemporary Art, ACCA. Thank you so much, Noor.
Thank you, Gorkum, and thank you to Diversity Arts Australia for this invitation to speak today. And please excuse me, I am missing coffee and water. It's Ramadan, so the first day of fasting. So Ramadan Kareem to anyone who's fasting. And I'd just also like to acknowledge and pay my respects before I begin speaking to the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people of the Kulin Nations, as the owners and custodians of this land where we are gathered here today. And I'd also like to acknowledge that sovereignty has never been ceded. This always was and always will be Aboriginal land. So as a 2019 Fair Play team member, I had the privilege of being one of the initial cohort of trainers. And what an exciting prospect that was. So from a professional but also a personal perspective, the initiative by Darts was both timely and dynamic, and I was thrilled to be invited to engage with and mentor arts organisations that I had long been associated with in some way or been an audience member for. So pretty much the local arts community where I've sort of grown up in the industry. In an industry that had some understanding of diversity, but often missed the mark, moving our sector beyond the default position that we can public programs our way out of the diversity issue was for me where the essential work lay. That excitement was of course tempered with the reality that we are only inching forward in terms of progress. These same conversations have been going on for decades. For me personally, more than 20 years in the arts sector, and I feel like I'm somewhat stuck in a loop of never-ending dialogue about diversity and also copping it on the chin. So one conversation that stood out for me a number of years ago was with a senior arts leader, an admirable woman from a diverse background who shared with me that despite having built from scratch 2 organisations and essentially being 2 directorships into her career, she was offered a spot as a participant in a program for emerging cultural leaders. What we spoke about that day has never really left me, that for diverse people we are seen as always emerging and never arriving, or we're never quite right for the job and most certainly the top job. This brings me to the heart of Darts and Fair Play. So this program was and is about addressing diversity in the critical places, from the top down and bottom up, embedded in the structure, across leadership and on the front lines. We often refer to this type of necessary restructure in the arts and how this is critical for real change. And the reason why we dedicate so much of our work to structural change, or what I like to think of as a structural realignment with humanity, is because we as a sector cannot rely on good people. I understand this may seem like a provocative statement, so let me explain what I mean here. There are, of course, many good people working in the arts, but as we know, people often move on. They move from one organisation to another, and we cannot expect or rely on good people staying put or not retiring. We should be at the stage now where the structures are in of themselves good, and that engaging diversity is no longer dependent upon the forward thinking or brave decision making of a few, or the thick skin and persistence of the others. For many reasons, Fair Play and the idea of a diversity-focused program based on research and led by diverse people is what I think of as the good work. The initial program, funded by Creative Victoria, afforded the support and gravitas Fair Play deserved The inaugural program was substantial. It engaged 20 organisations over 2 years. However, the program was not only about training the organisations, it was also about training the trainers, so to speak. Darts provided mentoring for the mentors, and as a mentor, I felt greatly supported in my work throughout my engagement with Darts and truly experienced that sweet spot most educators savour, that moment where you're really teaching to learn. As a mentor, I was also supported via the Meeting Point training and development workshops, provided with substantial relevant resources, as well as undertaking frequent debrief sessions and audit sessions. And I'd like to add here, in the nuanced areas of our work and diversity which honours and engages and foregrounds First Nations people, this was carefully and respectfully coordinated. Another important aspect of the program is that it allowed for unexpected conversations. I found many valuable discussions were prompted through the programmed activities and processes. There was also a good balance between one-to-one frank conversations with the executives within the client organisation and the broader sessions involving organisation workers and volunteers. I found the organisations to be committed to doing the work for the most part, and that there was a willingness to recognise that the diversity issue belongs to us all. This to me is hopeful. In fact, when one considers the structure of the program from a cultural development or CCD lens, we are literally part of the process that was being delivered to the organisation. In other words, we were practicing the structures that we wanted to see. In this regard, the program was cleverly designed and layered, not only with practical deliverables and outcomes, but the poetic and philosophical energy of true transformation and true cultural development. And on a final note, I think it's really important to mention, and this was mentioned earlier as well in the previous discussion, that we were not the token diverse people selected solely for the benefits or optics of our lived experience. On the contrary, each of the mentors and facilitators and the excellent people that I had the privilege of working with and alongside, many of whom are here today in the room, were experienced professionals with outstanding merit and well placed to deliver the program. Darts understood this well, and with that we had been offered the graciousness of a rival. And as much as I'm honoured to be part of this good work, with good people, for the good of people in our sector, I hope you understand what I mean when I say that I really, really, really don't want to be doing this still in 5 years' time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Noor. It's just so amazing to hear from everybody their experiences and such clear and direct descriptions of the program. We have 3 more speakers. I'm going to invite Kohava Lillet, who was also a mentor on the program. Kohava is a queer disabled activist, educator and writer. In their work as an access consultant, workshop facilitator and speaker, Zay draws on Zia lived experience as a non-binary, neurodivergent, physically disabled Jew, their connections to their queer disabled communities, and an idea of the future that is shaped by disability justice and transformative justice. Thank you so much, Kohava.
Thank you, and as other speakers have, I want to start by echoing my acknowledgement that we are on Wurundjeri land. This always was and always will be Aboriginal land, and I pay my respects to their elders past and present. Working as a trainer and a mentor in the Fair Play program was truly one of the best and richest and most meaningful facilitation roles I've taken on before. So much of the work that we as advocates, as people working in lived experience roles, as people drawing on marginalisation and talking about oppression, so much of that work that we do is done in isolation and is done in one-off engagements. We have a 2 hour, a 1 hour, a 45-minute lunch and learn handful of minutes with an organization to try and talk to them about the complexities of everything from colonization to racism to disability justice and ableism. And they expect it all in these quick little packages. And sometimes that's arrogance and entitlement, but also sometimes it's their own pressures, as the panelists spoke about, of lack of funding. So seeing that genuine and sustained support from Creative Victoria and other funding to support organizations to engage meaningfully and in an iterative fashion made all the difference. The equity action plans that I got to read at the end of that process after mentoring those organizations or seeing from the organizations that others had mentored were rich and great and not perfect, but so much better than what we see in a lot of organizations. And it was absolutely because we were able to have those sustained and repetitive and repeated conversations. And sometimes they did have to be a little bit repetitive because sometimes some people in the room needed to hear it a few times. And this was one of the rare opportunities that we got to say it a few times. And we got to be in that room as mentors, as marginalized people and experts in either racism or ableism or both, and the structures that impact us. But we got to be in that room with a level of authority. Often this work falls on the token marginalized hire within an organization because so many of us have that passion and drive to say, well, we can't let this happen to other people in our community, so we're going to step up, even though it's not our job. And we need people with marginalized experience and expertise in the room, but we also need to be coming in there with a level of support and a level of authority and the ability to facilitate the space or the ability to say, hey, we need to step back and have a different conversation. The knowledge that we could be here several times in a row, but also the people we were talking to were not our managers. My manager or supervisor was the incredible Gurkum or Mayhem or Janice at different times across different organizations, but it wasn't ever the people in the organizations we were mentoring. And that gave the necessary distance, that there was no fear of what they were going to do at the next performance review or the next time a contract comes up. It's the mix of sustained engagement and independence that allowed this program to let us speak very freely and frankly to people in management and executive roles who sometimes needed to hear, hey, you are a little bit the problem right now. Try again. And to their credit, they did try again. And most of the people in the room came in with the right attitude from the start, and the ones that didn't did try again. Because we could explain how. Because we could talk about it in academic terms and arts jargon and casual language and switch back and forth and code switch however many times we needed to find whatever that person's language was, whatever would let them get there, because we had more than one try to do it. We got to have them hear from a range of trainers with incredible expertise and different angles on questions of oppression. And then we got to have conversations with them that pulled out, hey, what surprised you in that? What confused you in that? And we got to see them be vulnerable and honest in a way that they would not necessarily have done the first time we spoke to them. But we had the space and the resources to build relationships with them and demonstrate that we weren't going to respond too harshly for them, that we weren't going to scare them away, that we were going to call them out and call them in, but that it was in the service of the organizations they cared about too being better. We got to run these sessions as examples of how they should run their organizations. We did a lot in training, a lot in the workshops, but so much of that learning also just came from showing what accessible practice looks like. A lot of disability justice practices help everyone. we're pretty much all familiar with the curb cut effect by now, that practice of how a practice that's developed for one disability or one part of disabled people often helps many disabled and non-disabled people. The ways that we run a meeting and facilitate a conversation or work on an equity action plan that are driven and informed by disability justice also make it easier for anyone in the room who is tired that day. And when are we not tired that day? For anyone in the room who is parenting and might need to jump on and off those Zoom calls occasionally, or who needs flexible work arrangements because they're running around care responsibilities or cultural obligations or disability and chronic illness. So much of that facilitation practice just became about showing up in relationship with people and listening to people about their needs and inviting them to start recognizing that they had access needs. And I'm not just talking about disabled people in those rooms. We all have some kind of access need. We all have some things that make it easier and more possible for us to show up and do the work, and some kind of things that would create barriers for us that might not be a barrier for the person sitting at the desk next to us. This program being run in a way that was driven by cultural safety and disability justice and accessibility became a demonstration for workers in these organizations about what these processes could feel like, about what conversations in a work or arts context could be when they weren't being driven by ableist and racist assumptions. It's the ongoing nature of the work that let that lesson really sink in. And it's a process that we're going to have to keep coming back to because, as people have said, people move on, but also because we keep developing new understandings and ideas about best practice. Even across the duration of the program, one of the highlights for me was the prep conversations we'd have beforehand, sometimes with other trainers if we were doing it as a paired workshop, sometimes with Lena and other people from DARTS who had developed the training packages, and getting to have those conversations and hear, why did you do it this way? Why do you explain things this way? And getting to share as mentors and trainers ourselves, oh, well, we do it this, or this language would work better here. Those conversations that we often don't get to have because so many of us are working alone or are the token voice in the room. Getting to have those conversations with so many different experts in these structures was an incredible experience. And so I'm looking forward to seeing 7 years later how much more DARTS has done and where Fair Play or the new program developed has gone. And so in my language we say, "Lekitra at, I'll see you later."
Thank you so much, Kahava. Thank you. And finally, we have invited 2 organisations that were participants of the Fair Play program to hear their experiences of the program. First, I'd like to invite Anne Robertson, the Executive Officer of Public Galleries Association of Victoria, PGAV, which is the peak body representing over 75 galleries across the state, including 21 regional and 13 outer metropolitan galleries. Since 2010, Anne has been a driving force in strengthening and advancing Victoria's public gallery sector. Under her leadership, PGAV has delivered major initiatives such as the Public Galleries, Our Creative Heart campaign, and Anne co-convenes the National Public Galleries Alliance, collaborating to advance galleries nationwide, and she represents the sector on both the NAVA Visual Arts Roundtable and the Arts Industry Council of Victoria. Thank you very much, Anne.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak today and share PGAV's experience of being part of Fair Play Regional Victoria, which took place throughout 2023. Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung as the traditional custodians of the lands on which we're meeting today, and acknowledge and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, but also to acknowledge the incredible First Nations arts leaders who are with us today. Thank you for your participation or leadership in this program as well. Public galleries play a vital role in Victoria's arts ecosystem. Together they attract 7.4 million visitors each year. They showcase close to 6,000 artists through their exhibitions, education and public programs. Our galleries have a long history of presenting and providing access to the work of First Nations artists. They regularly showcase women artists, culturally and linguistically diverse artists, LGBTIQA+ artists, and deaf and disabled artists. However, we continue to face challenges in achieving diversity, both in our artists, but also across our boards, staff, and audiences. So, and PGAV does a lot of benchmarking, so we're very cognizant of those, the barriers that are existing there. So we were absolutely thrilled to be invited by Diversity Arts Australia and Creative Victoria to contribute to the design of Fair Play Regional Victoria, to tailor the program for smaller regional galleries who typically have 5 or fewer full-time staff and many part-time roles. Through consultation with our regional members, we helped shape the program to ensure it reflected the realities and the needs of small arts organisations. As Margaret mentioned, a lot of them are part-time, and so trying to get them together on the same day was, there were costs, and often people were volunteering on those days to be there because the program was so important to them. It was quite impressive. Having helped design the program, we were then invited to take part, and which was allowing us to test the suitability of the program for small arts organisations firsthand. The program featured incredible presenters from Career Heritage Trust, Arts Access Victoria, as well as leading voices like Dr. Ruth D'Souza, who I have had a girl crush on since I at art school, so thank you. It was such an honour to hear you speak, so thank you. The program covered all areas of gallery operations, from governance, leadership and employment to programming, marketing and audience engagement. The program also included intensive work with mentors, and truly the most amazing mentors, who guided us through the development of what ended up being our inaugural Equity Action Plan. I can't tell you how amazing that was when you're a time-poor organisation. To actually have intensive mentoring that leads to a practical outcome is invaluable, and especially a practical outcome as important as this. Taking part in Fair Play Regional Victoria has empowered PGAV to take a leadership role in addressing barriers to access and promoting equity across Victoria's public galleries. As I said, a key outcome was the development of our Equity Action Plan. A key outcome of our Equity Action Plan is a Diverse Leaders Program, which will be designed to increase diversity among gallery leaders, staff, artists and audiences. It is what's really needed for the gallery sector to start bringing about that systemic change. We're now seeking investment to expand our small team to be able to support the delivery of this program. But PGAV is thrilled to have been part of Fair Play Regional Victoria and to help ensure the program meets the needs of small arts organisations. That's where I'm going to leave it, but if anyone has any questions about the practicalities of the program and its, how important it is to be, how inspiring the program was. It was challenging, I have to say. It led to lots and lots of conversations. The points of frustration were really the points where I took a moment to step back and go, that's my bias here. I need to just check this. I have to think it through. And then that informed what our program was going to be. It really, truly is the most amazing program, and I congratulate Diversity Arts Australia and all of the incredible mentors and presenters who helped ensure that this program is so relevant. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Anne. So great to hear from people's experiences of the program. And finally, I want to invite Dale Packard, General Manager of Music Victoria. Dale is a connector, strategist and lifelong music tragic with a knack for turning big ideas into grounded action. Appointed General Manager of Music Victoria in 2019, Dale brings a unique blend of lived industry experience and sharp policy thinking to his leadership. Thank you very much, Dale.
Thank you, Gurkham. So, yeah, I started in Music Victoria in 2019, and we were one of the first organisations to do the Fair Play program, and we're very blessed to have Gurkham as our trainer mentor throughout that process, and culminating in a fantastic equity action plan was an incredible process to go through, and the organisation got a lot out of it and continues to get a lot out of it today. When I was approached to speak about our experience in the program, I certainly hesitated in responding, because what you want to be able to say is, back in 2019, we didn't know what we were doing, everything was a shambles. We did the program and look at us now, we're amazing, we've solved all of the world's problems and everything is more equitable and better than it ever was. And I could speak about all the successes that Music Victoria and myself have been able to achieve over that time. And I didn't feel comfortable doing that. It felt like a pretty awkward position to be in. And I can't say across the board in every area that we have succeeded. So, for instance, if I look at our membership, our staff, and our board at this point in time, it's not particularly diverse. So, what can I say about that? What does that mean? And I gave it a lot of thought and realised that this kind of work is not linear. And it kind of goes in waves, it goes in circles, it goes in all kinds of shapes. We've had huge successes and huge outcomes that have been a result of this program, but it doesn't go like this. We've had times in the organisation where we've had incredible diversity on our board. We've had times where we've had incredible diversity amongst the staff in our programs. Right now, it doesn't look particularly like that, but that's okay. The process continues, the growth continues, the shapes evolve. So some of the great things that we have been able to do that were inspired by the Fair Play program and the Equity Action Plan that followed were things like the Accessible Venues project, which we did in partnership with City of Yarra and City of Melbourne, and we're working towards making our music venues more accessible. We did that with Moana Collette, and I've been working with her with a larger strategy that involves developing a charter of best practice for music venues in Victoria, and then ultimately nationwide as well, similar to what they have in the UK. And that's been a long, ongoing project that we've been proud to be part of. The Victorian Music Development Office, which is an organisation, an office delivered on behalf of the Victorian Government by Music Victoria, was so inspired by the Fair Play program that they ran a version of the Fair Play program and helped support 8 Victorian music businesses through masterclasses and mentoring. And that was delivered through 2020 and 2021, I believe, and we were able to see the ideas and thinking of the Fair Play program expand just beyond Music Victoria, but to a range of music businesses, which were incredible. And more recently, we have been funded by Vic Health to deliver a program called the All Good Project. The All Good Project started in Northern Territory and was centred around harm reduction, particularly around sexual violence and alcohol and drug-related harm reduction at venues and music festivals. And what we've done here in Victoria is taken that model, and we're delivering a version that centres cultural safety as the bullseye, so to speak, in that work, but still more broadly speaking about festival and venue safety. And we'll be running that program over the next 3 to 4 years, which is really fantastic. And I can't see Music Victoria having been able to do something like that if we didn't have that foundation that we got through the Fair Play program. So I just wanted to say thanks to Gurkham and Diversity Arts Australia for working with Music Victoria through this time, and we'll continue to grow and do better. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dale. Thank you to everyone for sharing all of your experiences today, and for being here and for listening and participating. That